What's up guys, it's HDL, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to perform Carnival Night Acts 1 and 2 with Sonic and Tails. There are a couple new things to know here, but I'm just going to be covering pretty much everything you have to know, assuming you don't know anything about how to perform this. Um, and I'm also going to touch on some of the new details for the people who already know how to do this level. So first thing you want to do is jump off of Tails as soon as possible. You can use an audio cue for this. So just listen to the music and look at my inputs on the top right to see when I jump. I like to piano the inputs so I have multiple opportunities. Then what you're going to want to do is just brake here and then spin dash. This is actually faster than just running up the slope. Jump there, keep holding right on these balloons. Over here, you're just going to tap left. And we want to make sure that he slows down. Once he lands on these ring monitors, he's going to get something that we call the wheel glitch. This is the wheel here. Now, there is an object right in the center of the wheel that has some special properties. That's what lets you stick to the surface of the wheel. But the actual range of that object extends beyond the wheel. It actually extends to where these ring monitors are. So the only requirements is one, you have to be within range of that object, and two, you have to be standing on the ground. So this is, of course, an oversight. You can stand on these, but normally if you jump on them with Sonic, you're not going to stand on them. You're just going to break them. So once you stand on that, it'll give you the properties of the wheel. And what you want to do is make sure you land on this right here. That way, when you run off the ledge, he'll just start to drop immediately because of the properties of the wheel glitch. It basically gives you, it forces you to move in a direction very quickly. In order to make sure your position is correct here, I like to use this reference, like a little circle thing here. I basically hold left so that I slow down his forward movement, and I position him roughly in line with this so that he lands in the correct spot. Once I get here, I face to the right, and I tap one button to rev once. I don't gain any speed when I do this. So if you look up here on the top, you'll see it says 0%. That's because I only tapped one button. And then right before these spikes retract, you want to release, you want to tap another button to rev once, and then release the spin dash. So I release it a little bit earlier because I already know the timing of when the spikes retract. And then once you get to around here, you want to start holding left to slow him down. That'll make him land here. And you want to keep holding left so that he faces left, and then roll so that he gets around this curve without any issues. Depending on your subpixels, sometimes you'll still get flung to the floor, but most of the time that doesn't happen as long as you roll along this curve. You want to keep holding left and push up against these spikes so that our speed is almost always going to be the same once we get around this curve. So the vast majority of the time, you'll get around this curve just fine, and on rare occasions, it'll fling you up to the ceiling, and that's just your subpixels. There really isn't too much you can do about that, but most of the time with this setup, you'll get around okay. So just keep holding left, and then once you pass this red balloon, you want to roll, and you'll break those ring monitors. Just keep holding left after that. And then once you are about to pass the ceiling, you want to do a quick rev and just release it. And you get the level wrap like that. And then do the same thing twice once you get the level wrap. So 1 and then 2. So here's the new bit here. I'm actually going to set up Sonic's position in a way that'll help us with the Tails manipulation. And this is something you only really have to worry about with Sonic and Tails, of course, If you're using Sonic alone, or if you're using Tails or Knuckles, you don't have to worry about this. But for Sonic and Tails, um, unfortunately for us, because of something called a frame rule, I'm not going to get too deeply into that, um, Tails' respawn timer is actually random. Um, it's usually not very long. It might be something like maybe 9 frames, maybe 20 frames, maybe 50 frames, but um, it is random and it does cause variance a little bit later. So what I like to do here is I make sure Sonic has a certain vertical position by continuing to hold left, and I use, areas in the level to make sure I know where he is positioned vertically. And then what I do is I just do a single rev. And what that's going to do is the rev is actually going to fix his vertical position. So when he's in this state, he actually cannot move up and down. That fixes his position here. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait for Tails. This timer right here is the Tails off-screen timer. Once that timer goes to 0, it starts the Tails respawn timer, and this is what it gave us. In this case, it gave us 20 frames, so that's just coincidence. This number can be different. So once that finishes, it's going to show Tails off-screen timer again. So now he's actually respawned, but he's up above us off-screen, because obviously the game is not going to load him in the viewable area. So now he's just flying back to us, and once he gets close to Sonic, he's going to drop like that. So you can tap down left at this point, or even slightly before he drops, because the inputs for Tails are actually delayed. So you can do the input slightly earlier. But if you want to be extra safe, you can wait until you see him drop here, and then you can tap down left. It's very important that you use down left and not straight left, because if you use straight left, you're going to make Sonic release his spin dash. If you tap down left, you'll make Tails turn around and face the wall without making Sonic release his spin dash. That's very important. We're actually going to use this for the entirety of the fight. So once he faces left, and right as he's landing, you want to make him rev. So you want Tails to be in a rev state. So you could just tap one button, or you can piano the buttons, whatever you want to do, like that. And then the next thing we want is to pay attention to this top here. The idea is we use the timing of the top, since it never changes, in order to help sync Tails. So what I do is, once this top starts moving at its fastest speed, you want to release your spin dash. And you want to basically raise the screen vertically to its highest point. That'll make it so that the top always bounces from the same position every single time, while also syncing Tails to jump with the same timing every single time. So I'm just going to rewind a little bit here, pay attention to the top and when I release. And I like to hold right a little bit so I slow him down. Now, for this next bit, some people like to hold left and just keep making Sonic run up the wall. I like to have Sonic visible on the screen. So what I like to do is I like to just position him under the ring, the word rings, and just keep him there. And then once this top gets to around here, just to the right of this vertical column in the background, I make him roll. That'll make Sonic drop down from the wall. And once you do this, you want to tap down right very quickly. You don't want to hold right too long. The idea is we want to change Tails' direction so that he faces to the right. Assuming you did that correctly, Sonic will land on the top without walking. That'll let you crouch like that. And what we want to do is, right before Tails lands, I do an input here, C, B, and then A. Right before he lands, remember, Tails' inputs are delayed. So right before he lands, you can do these inputs, and then when he lands, as long as you're still holding down, he's going to crouch, and then he's going to go into his rev state. What we want him to do here is stay like that. The idea is that we don't want him to be jumping around as we're fighting the boss because unfortunately, whenever you hit the boss and make him open up so that he becomes vulnerable, the hitbox that you normally bounce on disappears for a short moment. And if Tails hits the boss while you're about to bounce, he'll make that hitbox disappear, but the dangerous hitbox, the electrified hitbox down here, is still active. So you'll actually get hit and it'll ruin this entire setup. So what we like to do here is basically force Tails to stay put on the ground by forcing him to be in a rev state there. The idea behind making him face to the right is so that he's actually angled to the right. And the reason we do that is because we want to make sure he doesn't despawn for being off screen too long, which actually can happen if he's next to the wall and facing to the left. It's possible that he'll despawn and appear up top, and it'll kind of mess up the setup too. So once you get him into the rev state here, just hold down and wait until Sonic gets hit and keep holding down. You want to see Sonic crouching like this. Now note that the Tails off-screen timer is counting down during this. And remember what I said before about the top bouncing from the same position every time with the setup when we release the spin dash? The top will bounce from up here and down here based on the screen's position. So if you hold down, naturally, the screen after a while is going to shift downward. And that's going to change the way the top bounces. So we don't want that to happen. So what we do here is we actually move Sonic using diagonal inputs, like this. So I tap down left to make him move to the left. That makes him stop crouching, but it also makes it so that Tails does not release his spin dash. So I do that twice. Do it a second time over here. Basically, we want to reset the timer for the screen shift so that it never happens. We want to avoid that screen shift, if at all possible. Over here, what I like to do is I like to, and I'm gonna actually turn this off for this segment. So what I like to do is I like to look at the floor here. Once the floor is off screen for a couple frames or so, 2 or 3 frames, you want to pause the game and look at your position here. This is the point where you want to start holding left to walk to the left. I just use pause to help me time it. And of course, you can see Tails is on screen, so he's not going to despawn. His timer has reset. At this point, what you can look for is actually this spike. If it's in line with the light bulb of the boss, that's when you want to start holding left. The floor is a good reference as well. So you start holding left here. And then what you want to look for is when the boss is roughly touching the bottom of the screen, maybe slightly off. Over here, I actually, yeah. Not the very pixel that the boss is touching the bottom of the screen, but when it's like just a little, maybe a few pixels off the bottom, that's when you want to roll. You can also use this vertical column in the background to help you position, and you can use Sonic's foot in relation to the spike underneath him as well. The idea is that when we roll off the top, we want to fall off the top quickly. We don't want to roll too early because Sonic is going to stay on the top for some extra frames if we roll too early, and it's going to ruin this whole setup. So once we roll there, we're going to bounce off the boss, and we want to use diagonal inputs to move Sonic left and right. We want to make sure we always hold down for this entire setup, never release down. If you have to move left and right, and you will have to, use diagonals. So down left and down right. We want to keep Tails in the rev state. Turn that back on. He's still in rev state. The angle that you hit the boss at does not matter, as long as you hit the top of the hitbox. That will keep the setup consistent. Your horizontal position, be it on if you're further to the left or further to the right, actually does not influence the way the top bounces. The only thing that influences the way the top bounces is the position of the top and the bottom of the screen, which is why we want a specific height on these bounces. So just move to make sure that you continue to bounce on the boss without falling off. And then once the boss is defeated, make sure you do not jump or you'll get rid of the wheel glitch. And you hold down here. So we want to shift the screen downward because it actually changes where the signpost spawns. The signpost is going to spawn closer to the ground if we shift the screen downward like this. So we shift it downward, and then once this floor, well, once this checkered floor goes into the floor you're standing on, you can look at the bottom of the screen here, and you're going to see a change. When you see that change, let's do this in real time. Over here on the bottom right, you're going to see some art load. Once you see that load, you can either rev up, which will get rid of the screen shift, or you can just stop holding down. And that'll make the screen go back up so that the signpost will land in the floor as soon as possible. And this will save some real time. Alright, and that's Act 1. So now we're going to carry Wheel Glitch into Act 2 without jumping. So you want to make you want to take some extra care to make sure you do not get a straight jump here. It's more important that you don't get a straight jump than it is to get a super fast spin dash. So just be mindful when you're revving here. Just don't keep tapping buttons when you release. It's okay to just go a little bit slower just to make sure you never jump there. And then over here, before you go off the edge, you want to be holding left already so that you're slowing yourself down. You keep holding left, and by doing that and slowing yourself down, you'll make it so that you land on top of this thing. You can see how close he was to the edge. You'll land on this, and this is not treated as normal ground. This object actually has its own special properties. So when you jump off of this, you don't lose the wheel glitch. You only lose the wheel glitch if you are in a normal grounded state, not if you're in a special state, like on this object. So what you want to do is you want to jump off very quickly, hold right, and bounce off of this bat. Now I did the insta shield here, but you don't need to do the insta shield. The insta shield might actually ruin things. Keep holding right over here, keep holding right, and then over here you can stop holding right so that he decelerates a little bit, and then hold left over here so that he slows down. That'll put you here. Over here I like to run off the edge and roll, but if you don't want to do it that way, you can actually move very slowly off the edge and he'll fall onto this ceiling here. Then you tap left and then spin dash once and he'll come up here. And yes, if you tap left, he will spin dash to the right. Now for this section, you can either wait until the screen catches up to Sonic, or if you want to do it a little faster, you can look at this area here. This red and white area. Once this touches the bottom of the screen, I like to do a one tap spin dash. And it'll make you bounce on two balloons. Once you bounce on these two balloons, you can either hold right once you get to this wall, or you can do what I'm doing here. The problem with holding right is that sometimes the spikes below will knock you to the left. With this method, I actually avoid bumping into the wall and I maintain my rightward movement, so I guarantee that the spikes will hit me to the right side, which is what I want, but this is slightly more difficult. But yeah, I do move to the left first and then to the right so that I have rightward movement without bumping into the wall. And once you hit the spikes like that, you're going to land on these spikes. It doesn't matter if they're up or they're retracted. Either way, just do a quick one-tap spin dash, and you'll be fine. Once you get to this point, make absolute sure that he has touched the wall and has stopped. Do not hold down before then because you'll break the object below you. Once he's stopped fully, you tap one tap spin dash, and he's gonna break that, and then he's gonna stick to this curve right here. Hold nothing whatsoever until you get to this point here. Once you see Sonic here, you switch to holding right, and that's gonna slow down his downward movement. It's gonna put you in this spot here. Now for this section, what you want is a fast enough spin dash to get to inside the ceiling in the next bit. You need to make sure that you do either about a 5 tap or 6 tap to get enough speed. So just watch my inputs here. What I like to do there is I like to confirm that I'm in the rev state first. That way I guarantee that I don't jump and that I don't have any downward movement. Like that. Turn that back on too. Once you're in the rev state, if you piano the buttons, it doesn't matter how you do it as long as you make sure you have enough speed. You're going to enter the ceiling there. Hold nothing during this point. We want to hold right at a certain point so we can use the this area as our reference. So keep an eye on this thing right here. And as you can see, as it is almost off screen, touching the bottom, right here, our position actually changes. This is the point where we can actually hold right without ruining the setup. So just commit this this reference to memory. The very first red and white section you see, once it is off screen, you can start holding right. And hold right for about half a second. That'll give Sonic some upward movement because currently with wheel glitch, his orientation is made so that he's falling to the right. So we want some upward movement by holding right. And then we're going to do a quick one tap spin dash. And then we're going to tap left about 4 times. And this is just feel. Since you can't see Sonic off screen, you just have to kind of feel it out. I like to tap left 4 times. And then I hold right a little bit to make sure that he is facing to the right and has some upward movement. And then I make him go into a rev state so that I fix his vertical position so he's not moving up and down. So now he's in the rev state. And then you can just look at the level here. Once you see this, once this goes off screen, it's going to take roughly about 7 seconds more or less to get to the boss area. So you can just use that as a reference. And then once you get around here, once you see the wall here, you can release the spin dash and then just tap a quick jump and it's going to make Sonic land on top of this wall here. Once he lands on this wall, you can just spin dash off and there you go. Here's the boss. And now in order to do the boss in the most efficient way possible, you want to get this hit as early as possible. You can use the music actually as a cue to help you time this. When you jump, just hold jump And then once Sonic is roughly about halfway through his jump, or like around here, you want to keep holding jump, and you want to use a different jump button to trigger the insta shield. What I like to do, just out of comfort, I typically use the B button to jump, um, and then I would hit A and C after that in order to get 2 additional inputs for the insta shield, just in case. But once you are past the halfway point of your jump, you want to hit at least one different jump button, because you want to make sure you don't release jump and slow him down. That'll make it so that when he gets this insta shield hit, he has more of a downward bounce. His downward bounce is faster. And that's gonna make it so that when he drops this ball, you have already gotten enough hits that this will be the 8th hit, and you can just insta shield through that ball. And then once you get the final hit, this ball loses its hitbox and can no longer hurt you. And there you go. That is Carnival Night with Sonic and Tails. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll do my best to explain everything. Um, I will also keep the movie recording that I made for this on hand. So if you are in the Discord, you can just reach out to me. I'll send you the file if you want. You can play around with it, and you can just test things at your leisure and see if you're doing anything wrong. You can see how the file does it and compare it to your own inputs. And yeah, let me know what you think about the video.